Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're out here in California just chewing on some bark. I'm Gregg Rosenthal. I'm in my garage. I'm talking to my friend John Shipley, who covers the Jaguars on SI. He's going to talk some Travis Hunter, but he also can talk about the rest of the league, so we'll do a little bit of news. First, John, how is your Jacksonville offseason after Travis Hunter gave you a little bit of a jolt this year?
Yeah, it definitely did a 180 from the expected Mason Graham pick, I think. If they had picked Mason Graham, I think people would need to be reminded the Jaguars were more or less in the NFL right now. But Travis Hunter, man, it completely skyrocketed. I suddenly feel like that meme, like I just became important at work and it's terrible thing. That's exactly what the Travis Hunter pick feels like.
No, it's great.
It is great. It's fantastic.
Would you be on NFL Daily in late May? Maybe not the timing otherwise, because honestly, I was just going to read essentially your analysis of Travis Hunter's time with the Jaguars so far. They've already done a couple of open OTAs. They had a rookie mini camp. Like, I've listened to your podcast. People should check out the Jaguars Insider podcast. I was just going to sort of like copy what you said verbatim. I was like, no, why don't I actually have John on? Because to me, Travis Hunter is the most fascinating news story in the entire NFL this season. But it is late May, and that means all the teams are at OTAs. That's the first time this offseason that's happened. So we got a little bit of news. Most of this is late May news, so we'll kind of go through this quickly, John. But I'll be curious to get your thoughts on some of it. We'll go with the Giants. I kind of like looking at the quarterback battles right off the top, and Russell Wilson is out there getting most of the reps with the first team with the Giants. Not a huge surprise. A little bit of a surprise that Malik Neighbors is bothered enough by a toe injury that's bothered him since college that he's been sitting out of practice. So that's somewhat concerning. I noticed Andrew Thomas, their left tackle, still not healthy. Not a surprise after he had the foot surgery last offseason, but they are sprinkling in a little Jackson Dart with the first team right off the bat, and a little Jameis Winston with the first team right off the bat. And Jameis did an interception on his very first throw as a member of the New York Giants, which I love. Any thoughts? I don't know if you dove deep because you have Trevor Lawrence there into how you think Jackson Dart is going to adapt to this situation, and maybe how you think Russell Wilson looks there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like naturally, as a guy who's going to need some time, just coming from that style of offense in the SEC where it's really, a bunch of go balls and RPOs and stuff. It doesn't very much look like, an NFL offense, but obviously it has a ton of traits. It was interesting to me, them taking a quarterback in the first round. Like I thought it was either, okay, take a quarterback in the first round, ride it with the rookie, take your lumps, and maybe be like, hey, if he shows some development, show to John Mara and the ownership, hey, we've developed this guy, give us another year to take another crack at it, or sign some veterans to, try to save themselves and, throw out some life preservers themselves. They did both, which I don't really know necessarily what to do with that. I don't know what the actual plan is, but they had to do one or the other. So I guess they'll figure it out as they go along, which kind of seems like the theme of the Giants the last couple of years.
Right. I think the plan is just hope for the best. I saw our friend Mina Kimes. Check out her podcast, too, this week. I was on it. If you are interested in that, we talked AFC X Factors, and I saw her throw out there, what's the over-under for Dart starting? I think she said, weeks 8 or 10 or something like that. I was like, oh, under. I might take under week 3. It's possible he starts week 1. Having watched these rookie reps, if you're getting first team reps, even if it's just a sprinkling of them right off the bat, you got a chance for it. I know you had to live through the Jaguars giving Gardner Minshew half the reps, through half of training camp of Trevor Lawrence. It was crazy.
It was into the first week or two of preseason where it was starting to get ridiculous. Trevor was throwing to Tavon Austin in practice more than he was throwing to starting receivers. Quarterback battles in the offseason are a good thing, good bit.
Yeah, they're good to follow, and I do think they'll give Russell Wilson as good a chance as possible to get started with that team, but if it doesn't go well, they'll get rid of him. Also, Dexter Lawrence was out there practicing. I always like checking in on the guys who were hurt at the end of last season. Theo Johnson, who I thought was a really promising rookie tight end for them and had the same foot surgery that Andrew Thomas had. He was out there fully practicing again. So it's just good. It's more like you want to see boxes checked. That's how I think about it. And while we're talking quarterbacks, the Browns are giving all 4 of their quarterbacks reps with the first team offense. Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, they're 2 mid to late round picks. And then Kenny Pickett got the first rep of practice, at least that media was watching, which is interesting. And Joe Flacco is another one. And I saw that ESPN Cleveland had actually put out the graphic of like all 4 of their stat lines in OTAs in late May. It's not where you want to be as an organization.
No, social media has made OTAs such a wild time because like everybody agrees while they're happening that none of this matters. It's not close to real football. It's mostly just conditioning and like classroom stuff. But at the same time, all of it matters extremely much. Like Trevor Lawrence, like in the first OTAs the Jags had, I think threw like 2 picks, and it like there were people melting down. There was an entire like some former NFL player like analyzing it, and I'm like, what are we doing here with OTAs anymore? I think the Browns like almost similar to the Giants, like probably ride with like Flacco or Pickett until things inevitably get pretty bad, and then see what Shadur Gabriel has. Gabriel, I watched him a little bit in college just because he was at UCF for like 2 years. He's now the most notable UCF alumni in the NFL, as he's known around my neighborhood. After myself,
I was like, I'm trying to think. Has UCF produced?
I did. I once asked. I won't say the player, but I once asked like a UCF alum who like played for the Jags, like, "Hey, how are we going to do this weekend?" He goes, "We like he just did not." I get it, but no, I mean the Browns. I kind of view like the Giants. Like once the veterans kind of fall off, I think you probably see Shadur in there.
Yeah, the most interesting thing, and I'm with you on the OTAs, although some teams treat them differently already. The Patriots reporters there are like, they're treating OTAs way differently than Belichick did, where it was all about like teaching and just whatever. It's like they're evaluating, they're making them work a little harder. Some coaches approach it differently than others, but it's still without pads. The only interesting thing to me about the Browns is just that they're doing this, that they're splitting it up 4 ways. It's a wild way to do things. They're going to have to make some choices evenly. And it really shows to me that developing these rookies is important to them, because it doesn't make that much sense to me that you would have a 3rd and a 5th round pick taking first team reps right away. Speaking of a high pick, Caleb Williams, I just wanted to close the book on the Caleb Williams story. We talked about the Seth Wickersham piece about his father and him considering their options before ultimately deciding they'd be cool with the Bears, and Caleb Williams hadn't spoken to the media about it. And he did speak today, and I was impressed. He had a 4-minute monologue off the top of his head before taking any questions where, look, it's a 22, 23-year-old kid who has heard everything. It wasn't some pre-recorded statement. We'll listen to a little bit of it right now.
And then after I came on my visit here, it was a deliberate answer and deliberate and determined answer that I had, is that I wanted to come here, and just like Ben spoke about. Obviously, the past years, as everybody knows, it's a fact that quarterback play, there hasn't been a 4,000-yard passer. There's all these different things that come up, and so being able to have those thoughts is I think fair, to be able to have good and bad thoughts. But like I said, I came here on a visit, and like I said, just like Ben said, it's a challenge to be able to come in here and try and turn around, and that was the main goal of all of that.
He went on from there, before there. And he's in a tough spot as a young kid. But that he was absolutely right that not enough was made about the part of the story where I was like, yeah, once I went to Chicago, I immediately said, yeah, let's do it. And so there's nothing that the city of Chicago should hold against him. And I think their fans will appreciate it. I actually thought it was a good job. It did not seem like he had been overly prepped, although obviously like he thought about it, I'm sure, over the last week and a half. I mean, he even shouted out Kevin O'Connell and was like, yeah, I went there and it was a great visit. And like, look, he just won Coach of the Year. Like, I was, impressed by it. But once I was here, this is my city. And I still think the story was a story. It was not a non-story like the Bears fans were all saying. But I thought he handled it well, like you want your franchise quarterback to handle it.
No, 100% a story. Anytime, like you just, since like Eli, we haven't seen any pick really kind of player like exert their influence really on the draft system. So anytime a player is considering it, I think it's notable. Like we didn't see, I know there was people trying to generate it, but we didn't see Joe Burrow do it with Cincinnati when it would have made sense. I mean, they still haven't even signed the number 17 pick, and he's a defensive end, let alone the number 1 pick who's a quarterback. The Jaguars were going through a really bad era when Trevor Lawrence was number 1 pick. You didn't see it there. He had kind of a similar media thing where he did an interview with Sports Illustrated where he was like, his dad was like, he could retire without winning a Super Bowl and he's perfectly content with his life. And people obviously kind of latched onto that. So it's just like a lesson. Like when you're in like that spotlight, anything you say, people are just going to take one way or another, regardless of how it's intended. And I don't think he was even wrong. Like, look at how his rookie season went.
Right.
The Bears have devoted a ton of resources now to make sure they can fix all the issues he was kind of worried about before he got drafted by them.
It's funny because in the pre-draft process, there was all this talk about, how is Caleb Williams as a leader and how much does he love ball, essentially, and how he, handles his teammates and everything. And I think if you were just grading that since the day that he got drafted, just based on what I've heard from people that are there, just by how his teammates talk about him and just how I've observed him deal with the media, that's all been an A to A+. And I think the on the field play was like a grading on a curve for number 1 overall pick was like a B-. But I think he'll be better this year because he's going to have a lot more support. And his old friend Shane Waldron is down with you guys in Jacksonville. You reminded me before the show. I kind of forgot about that.
They swapped Shane Waldron and then Press Taylor went to Chicago. So it's literally just Jags and Bears fans yelling at each other on X every time one of their names comes up. It's both funny and pretty unsettling.
Yeah, Jags fans, calm down if you're getting on Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron had a totally solid NFL assistant coaching career before landing in Chicago, which is where coaches go to die. And he was like year 4 of a not so good Eberflus era. And I thought actually did some good things with Geno Smith back in Seattle. So he's not the play caller anyways in Jacksonville. The key guy, we'll talk about it in a second, is Liam Coen, right?
It was funny at the combine at Cohen's podium session. Somebody was like, "So you hired Shane Waldron? You worried about the Chicago thing?" And he just goes, "No."
Yeah, what's he gonna say? I wanted to lead the show with Stefon Diggs, and I thought, am I showing my Patriots bias, or do I think that Stefon Diggs partying on a boat with his girlfriend Cardi B and a number of other friends is actually the perfect May story? I like to think I would have thought that regardless. I did not notice in all those videos that were going around on the internet, however, that he appeared to hand a pink substance, over to 3 girls after insisting that they call him daddy, and he did. And that is actually like something that a reporter would ask Mike Vrabel about while Diggs is not at OTAs. Let's listen to Mike Vrabel.
Well, it's something that we're aware of, and obviously we want to make great decisions on and off the field. And we're hoping that with our time here on the field today, and that when we don't have a script and we're on the call-up periods, that we're making great decisions. And so the message will be the same for all our players, that we're trying to make great decisions, and any conversations that I've had with Stefon will remain between him and I and the club.
Woo. Great decisions. I wouldn't have said it was a bad decision to be on that boat and having fun. It seemed fun. The decision where it's getting recorded, and then you're passing a suspicious looking powdery substance is where maybe it's not as great a decision.
If you had to rank like the 32 NFL head coaches on who'd be like the most upset about something like this, Vrabel's like near the top, right? Like it's the perfect storm.
He absolutely is, and Diggs got a lot of guaranteed money, not past this year. So it's really like a 1-year deal, and Diggs hasn't been with the team lately at OTAs. He's recovering, of course, from that torn ACL, and video. You can check it out. And
my wife saw it on TikTok and sent it to me. And normally when it gets into her realm and she's seeing TikToks about it, that's normally when it's definitely escaped captivity.
Well, the more concerning part, I think, for me, just as someone who wants the best for Stefon Diggs, is his high profile girlfriend is on that boat, and that conversation did not seem one that or some of the actions going on. I'll just leave it right there. Let's move on finally to some more sound. When Terry Bradshaw has a great quote about not wanting Aaron Rodgers on his team, I'm just going to play it on the show. So let's listen.
What do you think about possibly Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback?
That's a joke. He shouldn't. That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? I mean,
That's
that
not
guy
the
needs
Steelers' way, right?
No, man, that guy needs to stay in California and go,
Thank
go
you.
somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there.
100%.
I love that. I'm chewing on some bark out here. I love chewing on bark. It's just a strange sort of mind-blowing combination of things. But I agree with Terry Bradshaw on this one.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like Terry Bradshaw thinks he has like a California tie-dye hippie point of view on everything. I mean, nothing wrong with chewing on some bark. I live in Florida. It's practically a delicacy here. But I agree. I think it's so weird that the Steelers as an organization are like doing this Aaron Rodgers dance. Like it made sense in like March, but like we're in the middle of OTAs now. And I saw a quote today, like Mason Rudolph talking about DK Metcalf's athleticism. And like, no offense to Mason Rudolph, but that's a terrible omen for the Steelers that Mason Rudolph is who you have answering questions about your new receiver who you just, traded for.
Right. And DK, by the way, is not even there this week. Mason Rudolph said he's been there about half the time. Not that that's a big deal. He just got married. These are voluntary sessions, but you're absolutely right that it's just awkward and a little embarrassing that ultimately the Steelers kind of prostrated themselves, waiting for Aaron Rodgers to do this, where I think they know that he's joining the team sooner than later. A couple other nuggets, and then we'll talk some Jaguars. Just wanted to mention, in terms of OTA absences, I don't track each one like day to day, but Rashawn Slater, the tackle for the Chargers, TJ Watt of the Steelers, and Terry McLaurin weren't at practice for their teams. And those are all three guys that I think are looking for new contracts. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And then Tommy Tremble, if you're familiar with him, the tight end of the Panthers, had back surgery. That was news to me and I think to Panthers fans, and they're hoping he's going to be ready for the start of the season. We will be back in just a minute and talk a little Travis Hunter with my friend John. All right, as always, I took longer than I expected, like flying through some relatively unimportant news. I thought we'd spend the whole show on the Jaguars. We just do 5 minutes. But it's one of the things I like about this NFL Daily format is I'm into the news almost all times a year. So I do like to keep all the listeners informed. Hopefully they enjoyed that part of it too. But yes, John, you're there. Travis Hunter, I'm convinced, will be in the Jaguars Ring of Honor someday. What is it called?
I think it's called the Jaguar. I want to say it's the Pride.
Okay,
it's
the Roar.
Pride,
yeah,
it's the Pride or the Roar, and then the cheerleaders are the other one.
Right. I remember they had some special name for it, and it's why I've killed the Browns for making this trade, because I do believe in Travis Hunter that much, and I know he's going to have to prove everyone right, but I do think he's a guy that people are going to remember as a Jaguar for a very long time, and that you have a long-term plan for him. And we are at the very, very, very beginning of that long-term plan. But what has the short-term plan looked like practically on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I've seen him now practice 3 times, once at rookie minicamp and then twice at OTAs. They've held one other rookie minicamp day that media wasn't at, and then 2 other OTA days. So I've seen him practice 3 out of the 6 possible times he's practiced. Every time I've seen him practice, he's been on offense. And I don't know if that's a concentrated effort or a plan or whatever, but his days on defense have been the days that the media haven't been there. But the days that we've been there, it's not like he's going back and forth, or somebody even was asking at the first rookie minicamp, is he going to wear a 2 colored practice jersey where he just flips it inside out like flag football and it's going to be offensive defense? But Liam Coen, made it pretty clear yesterday. He was asked, is there ever going to be a time where he's practicing both positions in one practice? And he'll probably have to do it during the season because practices are so much shorter then. It's also a lot less physical practices because it's mostly game plan stuff and install. But during OTAs during this time, he's not doing 2 things at once. So if he's starting the day at receiver, he's ending the day at receiver, and he's taking 100% of his reps on one side of the ball, whichever one he starts at. But they've said he's practiced at cornerback a couple times. They said he was at cornerback at last Wednesday, so that'd be their 3rd OTA practice. So I guess he went 2 days at receiver, 1 day at corner, and then yesterday back to wide receiver. So it's pretty clear where they have their focus on. And I'll be honest and frank, it probably is where it deserves to be, because you can tell, from rookie minicamp, at least my thought was he's definitely a guy who needs to be taught the finer points of position. He's never been able to just like solely focus on it. He's always been going both ways. He's kind of at Colorado. It seemed like they were just letting his athleticism take over. So to me, the plan makes sense, but I'm already seeing him honestly making strides in that department. Just the little things at wide receiver.
Okay, a lot of ways I could go there. Let's go back to what you said, that you're not surprised that they're doing it on offense. Do you mean because that's where he would be more valuable for this Jaguars team, that just makes sense for him to start his career there, or like that's where he maybe needs more work is wide receiver, so you start him there?
I honestly think it's a little bit of all of it. I think obviously wide receiver versus corner, wide receiver, like just look at the money and the contracts. Wide receiver is a more valuable position right now. Liam Coen's an offensive minded head coach. They said like Tony Bazzelli did like a complete media tour before, the draft. And pretty much every time, he did an interview, he was like, yeah, we're looking for guys who can score touchdowns. So obviously, they're seeing offense is more valuable, but I also think like the time on task, receivers probably where he needs it more than corner. You go back to after they drafted him, James Gladstone even said, he has spent more time at corner in his football career, football life than at wide receiver. So just getting that coaching each and every single day, like he'd probably make a quicker and easier transition to corner than wide receiver. But I also think they see it as intrinsically a more valuable position too.
See, I really respect your coverage. If you're interested in like learning how a great, beat writer covers the team, you should check out John's stuff. And I listened to your pod and was checking out some of the articles, just like wanting you to be irresponsible and tell me how insanely explosive like Hunter has looked and that he just moves different than everyone else. And you're on there saying, De'Ami Brown's probably made more plays than anyone. De'Ami Brown's been awesome. It's like, no, give me the red meat. Tell me how Travis Hunter's looked.
You see, I remember learning my lesson from last year from wondering when Ryan Nielsen would get head coach interviews. So I've pulled back a little bit, but to his credit, De'Ami Brown, in shorts and helmets has looked good. But no, Travis Hunter, he has looked good. Like from the first rookie minicamp practice to yesterday, I've seen him make significant strides because you could tell like his first rookie minicamp practice, he was like redoing drills like 3 or 4 times because he was like messing it up, and the wide receivers coach Edgar Bennett would correct him, and then instead of just going to the back of the line, he'd go right back to the front and restart it. You're not seeing, like you saw it a little bit the next OTA practice, and then at this last one, you just didn't see it. So you're clearly seeing him make strides as a route runner. He had some reps, and I wrote that, he was impressive without the ball in OTAs yesterday. And I saw some fancy account retweet it and be like, this is gibberish. How is a wide receiver impressive without the ball? And like, they're
it happens all the time. They're out there for like 60 plays a game.
Yeah, exactly. And there were just a couple reps, and there was one in particular against Jordan Lewis, who one of the NFL's better slot cornerbacks. Like, they signed him to a big deal, but he's been one of probably a top 4 to 5 nickel corners in the NFL at the Cowboys last couple of years. And Hunter, just the route that he ran, the explosiveness that he had out of his break, Lewis couldn't keep up with him. And it looked like the kind of mood where I'm like, I don't know who can keep up with him. So yeah, he's still learning the little fine details and stuff, but he does move differently. He does move like a freak. He does have that star power that you can just automatically sense wherever he lines up on the field. Like, okay, this is a dude. He has all of that.
Right. I became so, not that I was alone in this, but enamored with him and convinced that he could excel at both positions, but at receiver specifically, watching him, not because I know enough or thought that he's so refined as a route runner, just that the guys that do move differently on tape, that you can just tell move differently in a way that the game just really slows down for them, like mentally and physically, where he can control his body in a certain way that few others can. Those guys translate to me. Odell Beckham was certainly one of them. Malik Neighbors, I think, was one of them. Justin Jefferson in the NFL is like the epitome of that. And frankly, Brian Thomas Jr., like his teammate, is 100%. One of them. So I guess I'm curious how you've seen this coaching staff come in and what kind of ideas you think that they have. And I thought it's interesting. You said, yeah, like they're an offensive staff. Maybe that's why he's on offense. Because I've noticed they've been all about the offense. And like, I get it. Offense, I think it is more important, or it's a little more stable. And that makes sense that you would start there.
Yeah, like it's more important to them, like obviously to support Trevor Lawrence than it is to have a good number 2 cornerback, like that, and that's all things I think like we can agree with. And I think the Hunter pick was in a lot of ways, like obviously, adding a guy who they think is an elite guy on and off the field, but also as a way to just help your quarterback, because a lot of the things that Travis does well and things that he won't need, years of developing at receiver at, are things that Liam Coen's scheme, automatically brings in. Like Liam Coen last year with the Buccaneers, they were probably the best screen team in the NFL. And he has a really good scheme in terms of how he dials those things up, for wide receivers, for running backs. And Travis Hunter, I think he's going to feast on those this year. I think, if you want a candidate for, and I'm a Trevor Lawrence, like I'm a fan of his game. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's better than most people do, but I could definitely see like his production this year there to be some, Fugazi fakeness to it, just because they have the pieces between the scheme and the talent, I think, to really eat on the easy button kind of things like that. And that's where I think Hunter will make everybody's life kind of easier on offense.
Okay. So how do you think him and Brian Thomas Jr. complement each other? Because I was so high on Thomas Jr. that I've, brought it up many times because it ended up being right, unlike most of the takes that I have, where I don't think anyone would have expected him to be a top 20 receiver right out the jump, which I think he was. Like he was already a top 15, 20 receiver if you're being conservative as a rookie. How do you, I guess I'm curious just what you saw from him and everything that you think about him, and then how he fits with Hunter and with Liam Coen and Trevor, because that's, to me, the model here is like Cincinnati. It's Tampa too, but it's like Cincinnati that like these are the three pillars along with the head coach of your organization now.
100%. He is like you said, one of the pillars. When a new regime comes in, the way I see it is the new regime has their guys. They have the leftover guys from the old regime who they'll kind of pick through and determine who they want to keep. And then there's a third, much smaller group of guys who are just cornerstones that it doesn't matter who picked them. Any regime wants them. And Brian Thomas Jr., to me, is right at the top with Trevor Lawrence, Josh Hines Allen, Travis Hunter, on that list. I think even with the addition of Travis Hunter and, even De'Ami Brown, the passing offense is still going to run through Brian Thomas. I think that, one of the first things Liam Coen kind of said, to the local media when he got here was when he was evaluating receivers, he was like, I probably didn't evaluate Brian Thomas as hard as I should have, because obviously Tampa, wasn't looking for a receiver in the first round. But, he gave credit to the last Jaguar staff for how often they put him in the slot and seeing what he could do from there. And he knew that, he's a really, really good deep threat, but he's more than that. And that's what I really noticed from him last year. Obviously he has the crazy speed, you can get open deep on anybody, the catch radius, but his releases off the line, his body movements for a guy who's, that tall and has that frame, just his quick snaps, the way he can get low and break. He can run pretty much, any route, any kind of scheme, whatever you want. He, to me, has all the tools you're looking for in a number one receiver. Literally the one thing I think he has to get better at is catching the football, which is, a pretty, natural thing. Even on some of his touchdowns last year, he double clutched it, but I think he has every trait to excel, especially with this new staff scheme, and they absolutely love him. Everybody in that building thinks that dude is a star.
Speed is at that level is just so hard to find, and we'll see how De'Ami Brown works out. It for the listeners that forget, did not have a lot of production for Washington, but really came on in the playoffs. Had two of the best games of his life in the playoffs, which helped him get a 1 year, $10 million contract, which in this market is number 3, number 4 receiver, Bunny. And you said he's looked great. And so the three of them, man, they can not just, get to the intermediate level really quickly and have those sort of timing throws that I think Lawrence can be great at, but they can set up each other where one of them, as you mentioned, Hunter, half his catches last year were just on those bubbles and screens and everything. And man, the guys going deep can open it up for each other on the short stuff. They're all pretty versatile. I am excited. I know I had you on in August and I was thinking, well, the Jaguars, I'm not sure which direction they're going to go, but I do find them interesting. They were like a boom or bust team, and they definitely busted. But I think they're going to be more entertaining to watch. How's the Liam Coen experience been for you as a guy covering the team? Obviously, he made a lot of waves with his introductory press conference, but how's it kind of been since then?
No, I remember sitting there in the crowd 10 feet away from him. The second he said it, I was like, wow. The second I look at my phone, this is going to be absolutely everywhere, isn't it? Now, he has honestly been really good to cover from our perspective so far. Like I know some people who cover the Buccaneers who said he was always good in the media there. One thing I'll say about him, honestly, is he's incredibly on the podium, like honest in some of his responses in a way I haven't really seen the coaches I've covered. Doug Marrone didn't really say anything. Urban Meyer, he not only, being honest is not one of his strong suits. Like he barely knew the roster. He called James Robinson James the running back. Roy Robinson Harris was Roy Roberts, just stuff like that. So you weren't getting anything from him. Doug Peterson was like the classic, like paint by numbers, like NFL coach in terms of like coach speak. Like he was just giving you the generic stuff. Liam's very honest. Like he was asked about their rookie running back, Bayshal Tuden after the first OTAs, and he like fumbled the ball in his very first rep. And somebody asked him after practice, they're like, "How's Tuden doing?" And he goes, "Well, he fumbled today. That stood out." And it was just like an honesty to me that like I'm not like in the past, I'd probably hear him be like, "Oh well, he's making progress. We'll see how he does." So just in terms of getting actual interesting answers and stuff we can write about, he's been good. I think in terms of the X's and O's, what they'll bring schematically just to make them a more interesting team, I definitely think that they'll bring, because that's been a thing with the Jaguars. Like they've had all like the pieces in terms of the players to be an interesting team the last couple of years. It just never seems like, the front office and coaching staff have pulled their weight in that area too. And now it feels like, they're doing that.
Yeah, we'll see. Sometimes the rookie head coaches are like more transparent, and they actually come into it wanting to be transparent. Like, I don't know what Doug Peterson was like his first year in Philadelphia. And then by year 3, it's a different state of affairs. Yeah. Or by year, whatever it was, 37 for Urban Meyer. I don't know where he was at. What did you say? Telling the truth was not his strong point. That's a very nice way to say he was like a lying liar who always lied all the time. And
it's probably the nicest thing I've said about him.
Yeah, didn't seem like there's Liam. Yeah, didn't seem like Urban was too invested in the job. No,
that still feels like a fever dream. That still feels like the weirdest 9 months of my life.
I'm excited really to just watch Hunter and to hear about how these first practices have been. It is interesting to think how they're bringing him along, because he's in defensive meeting rooms though too, right? So is he? Yeah. He's like doubling up with the meetings. How does that work?
Yeah. So while he's not like doubling up on the practice field, they did say he's been doubling up in the meetings, which seems immensely difficult. Like at least to me, I guess from their perspective, and Hunter even said after rookie minicamp, he's like, well, the defense is easier to learn than the offense, because I guess there's different calls and stuff, but defense like coverages are coverages. Not many people are throwing that many twists on it. Whereas Liam Coen, it seems like from everybody's description, like his playbook is vast and like Frankensteinish.
That it's just something we literally have never seen before covering in my time covering the league, but in really anyone's time covering the league, because you'd have to go back to like the 1950s, and it's just not even close to the same sport. Before I let you go, I did notice you had a hot take on your website, being very upset. It's ranking season, John.
That's right.
And you were not happy that Trayvon Walker was not even listed in PFF's top 32. And I don't put too much into the rankings, because if you make a ranking, people are obviously going to disagree with some of it. So it happens. But I do think we're entering year 4. Trayvon Walker, we'll see if he gets a contract extension or not. Where do you see him as this number 1 overall pick that a lot of people have picked on over the years, because he hasn't been as good as Aiden Hutchinson? Where are you in the Trayvon Walker journey, and where do you think like PFF, maybe national people get it wrong, if we are?
Yeah, no, I even mentioned in my pod that's coming out tomorrow that like I'm aware I'm feeding into the machine when I do that. I'm very aware.
It's fine.
That's the desired effect. Now, Trayvon's a guy who I've honestly come around a decent bit on. After his rookie season, I was openly going on like radio shows in Jacksonville and be like, I don't know if he's ever going to be a double-digit sack guy. Like he'll probably be fine, like get like 7 or 8 sacks a season, be a good run defender. He's fine, but I didn't think he'd ever be like a double-digit sack guy. And then suddenly he's done it in back-to-back years. And I am in complete agreement that like he's not like a top 10, 15, probably even top 20 edge. I think like last year for PFF, he was like 19th in pressures, but 4th in pass rush attempts. So he just doesn't have the efficiency as a pure pressure guy. But I do think we've gotten to a point where he is underrated because, I mean, he's at least getting sack production. His production's increased each year. He's 24. He plays the run well. It seems like for at least what the Jaguars envisioned when they picked him at number 1, which was to start slow and then to kind of gradually get better and become a pretty good player. It kind of seems like, like you can question Balky picking him over Hutchinson, but at least Balky's evaluation of him and how his career arc would go, it kind of seems like he was right so far. But as long as Aiden Hutchinson's around, I do think Trayvon's probably going to be in that weird kind of perception area.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's only 24, and this idea that he's this incredibly talented physical specimen that's going to get better and better, and he has, like, he can continue to get better. And here's the real test. Like, I'd be very surprised if he didn't get a very good second contract from the Jaguars. And if you had taken him number 4 overall or number 6 overall and you're the Jaguars, like, he is as good or better than half or more than like the number 6, 7 overall guys. He just got taken number 1, and it was a weird draft, and that's not his fault. But considering what a risky pick he was at the time, I'm with you. I think, I don't know if he's underrated, but I'm not sure the conventional wisdom has caught up to, like, he's a plus starter. And half of the top 10 picks don't even turn into plus starters. That's just how the NFL draft works. So ultimately, like, he's been a pretty good pick. He's just not Aiden Hutchinson, at least not yet.
Yeah, like, if Aiden Hutchinson wasn't in a draft and Kayvon Thibodeau went number 2, like, the Trayvon pick probably, like, nationally looks a lot better.
That's a good point. Kayvon was in that draft? Is that correct?
Yeah. I remember I had Trayvon as my I missed on everything. I had Trayvon as my number 3 edge guy. I had Kayvon number 1 over Hutchinson because I was like, I don't know about this short arm Hutchinson guy. I was having a bulky moment, and then it just blew up on me completely on all levels.
It's a great shout, though, because a lot of draft Twitter agreed with you. And I think I might have had it lined up that way too. At least Thibodeau over Trayvon Walker was totally consensus.
100%.
And ultimately, between those two players, Walker's absolutely been the better pro. So I just, we don't talk Jaguars enough on this show. I feel like it's been a nice, heavy AFC South week. We talked a lot of Titans on our last show. It's that time of year. We should be giving the AFC South some love. And I'm glad for you, John, that you got Travis Hunter, because he got married this weekend. I'm buying into just like that he is a intangibly rich guy that's got to change the culture just because he just seems like such an infectious, like, amazing spirit. I'm buying into all of that. And because of that, John, I think he's going to have this, like, crazy, epic career, and you're going to be there to capture all of it. Appreciate you, John.
Hey, I appreciate you, man, always.
Check out John, as I mentioned, Jaguars on SI and the Jaguars Insider Podcast. We will be back wrapping up the week. It's going to go into your feed Friday morning. That will be with our good friend Patrick Claybon, talking about some veterans under a little bit of fire. And yeah, like, we got a new party boat. We got a party boat story to talk about. Football is back.